Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning. Well, that was an eventful night. The Utah Jazz with a couple of draft picks. Not exactly what we expected, but not a total surprise either. And the Utah Mammoth, in advance of their first round of the draft, which is Friday, the rest of the NHL draft is Saturday, they make a trade. And that was a little surprising. We can start with the Utah Jazz and we'll get to the Mammoth. You're going to actually hear from the Jazz later this hour. You'll hear from Austin Ainge. He met with the media after they made the trade in the two picks. Ace Bailey slides to number 5 and the Jazz grab him. Austin not worried that he didn't work out for the Jazz because he met with him at the Combine and he'd been watching him play in college. And then they draft Walter Clayton with the 18th pick. They made a trade and moved up from 21 to 18. Ben Anderson saying Miami wanted Clayton at 20, so the Jazz jumped in front of them. And to move up 3 spots, to get the 18th pick, they had to give up 21. They had to give up one of the number 2 picks this year, and then they had to give up a couple in the next decade, in the 2030s. Plenty of time to recover those if you choose. And so these two players come in. I mean, there's a few things, and we can dive deep into this later this morning. I think, though, if you want the shorthand on Ace Bailey, he's big. Not as big as we were told he was when he was at Rutgers, when we were told he was 6'10", but 6'7". If you're over 6'6", you got size in the NBA. You know, I think the goal for a lot of NBA teams, if they had their druthers, would put 5 guys on the floor who are 6'6" or taller. Most of the best players in the game are in the 6'6" to 6'10" range. And so, you know, every once in a while you get a joker. He's 7 feet tall. That's great. Steph Curry's a little on the short side, but get yourself 5 guys over 6'6", and you can usually match up with the other team. Get smaller guys, they have to be awesome players. Now with Bailey, if you had to throw a big question mark out there, because he's obviously got athleticism, he's obviously got size, he's obviously a fearless scorer. If anything, maybe rein him in on that and see if you can get rid of some of the low percentage shots, but he does make tough shots. So if there's a negative, they didn't win. Rutgers was 15-17, and they had 2 of the top 5 draft picks in the country. That'll always be a little bit of a mystery. Now, we had people on during the course of the year. Actually, we had a guy on from Rutgers when we were prepping for the draft, and he said, yeah, the rest of the team's terrible. They're playing 2-on-5 out there, which, you know, it's a plausible explanation. So Bailey falls to 5, and the Jazz felt like it was too good to pass him up, so they grab him. And then with Walter Clayton, you know, it's the other story. Well, they won. They won, and he can shoot it. Now can he do everything else? He shot it. He was a pretty efficient scorer, and he hit big shots, and obviously the awesome tournament run. You'll hear Austin Ainge say, yeah, we've been following him since he was at Iona. And if you're listening to PK, when he was on late last night as our 7-hour draft coverage ground along, PK was saying, yeah, the most impressive thing, though, is that he wasn't a high-end recruit right away. He went to a second-tier school, Iona, with Rick Pitino, who obviously has an eye for talent, built some awfully fantastic, wonderfully talented Kentucky teams. They're just loaded with NBA players. So if Pitino sees something in you, that's a good mark. And he plays well at Iona, so Florida wants him, and then he ends up winning the NCAA title. So, but can he do everything else? But you can score, and that's a big piece of the puzzle because, as you know, that's what they give you points for. All right, now in addition to that going on, we had the Mammoth making a trade over here. So Kesselring and Doan are gone, and they get a 23-year-old from Buffalo who immediately signs a 5-year deal, J.J. Peterka. And he had 68 points last season at the age of 23. So that's a heck of a score. Now, having said that, Buffalo gets, you know, a good defenseman, a younger guy in Kesselring, and, you know, 6'4" defenseman. Now they're bringing in, other people, so maybe they afford him. Maybe Kesselring feels a little extra, but he's not on an outrageous number, and he's young and he's productive. So, hey, you got to give up something to get something, right? So we'll have more on this stuff as the morning continues. Right now, though, we're going to pivot to a little BYU football. We talked to some Cougar coaches earlier this week. Obviously, since then, they got the 5-star quarterback to commit. We talked with Jay Hill about the defense and where that stands. As you know, every time you get another year under your belt, you get more of your guys. You get guys who understand what you're doing. Here is Jay Hill, BYU defensive coordinator with PK and I.
You have the off-season smile right now. You're not feeling any of the tension, any of the pressure we'll see on your face when we interview you in a couple of months.
Yeah, we are heading into a good stage of our careers right now. When summer hits, when July hits, things mellow out a little bit, so we can put our smile on.
There's so many high expectations now, which is a good thing. This is your third year. 2 years ago, I remember talking to you. We're down here at Cedar Hills, the BYU Golf Day. Was why we're here, talking to you on the patio, and you're talking about so much newness, and then you get the thing going. Well, now, in just a short span of time of a couple years, there isn't newness for you. You know everybody on the team, defensively I'm speaking, obviously. And so how much better is the program from your perspective from where it was the first year in the Big 12 last year and then this year, because expectations for you guys are sky high?
Well, I think we're way better. Just the expectations we have for the players and what they have for us, I think they're working better, which is a good thing. I think we've built our depth to be much more Big 12 ready. So there's a lot of aspects of the program that I think are getting better. Expectations are a good thing.
Yeah.
You guys know when I first got to Weber State, there was no expectations,
0.
and that was miserable.
Right.
And then we had super high expectations, and I promise you, no one puts higher expectations on us than we do ourselves. So that's a good thing.
There are Cougar fans who always have something to worry about one way or another. But when we were talking to Kalani last week, I was really struck by he acknowledged that there's multiple issues out there. Some of them you can talk about, some of them you can't. But he seemed kind of just like he was hovering above it all. And I started thinking in his decade, and you've known him a long time, obviously, going back to your time together at the U. But now in this decade, he had to change the offensive coaching staff after a losing season. He had to change the defensive coaching staff. He had to come back from another losing season. He had to deal with COVID and a schedule that was just made up on the fly. He had to deal with the transition to the Big 12. He had to deal with the transition to NIL. So it's like, that's 5 major things in 10 years off the top of my head. At some point, you're like, oh, throw whatever at me. I mean, what does it matter? This is like, when's the next game?
Well, I think he's a very veteran head coach now, and he's seen a lot of crazy issues. He's seen a lot of things that occur in college football, and the reality is in college football, there's always going to be something, and I promise you it's not over. There's things in the future that are going to occur. People talk about realignment. They talk about so many other things. There's going to be more stuff that occurs, and we just got to be ready for it, and we will handle it. And I think BYU is in a phenomenal place to handle the different things that come at you.
Defensively, when I look at your group, you're too deep. So many of the guys have experience, and they're not going to be new. So you're not really relying on a whole lot of new players. And even new players like Tonavasa, he's not new to the game. He's new to you, but that doesn't really matter. He's a plug-and-play guy, and you got another couple of guys. But you spoke to it a little bit of the depth. Basically, and you every team loses guys like you lost, what's-his-face, Taggart. But you got a Sarah coming in there who's in the program, who has the potential to be really good. So it seems like it's not a lot of holes, and the holes that you do have, you're filling them with experience.
Yeah, I love the transfers we took, and I love the guys coming back. There's always a position group or two that we feel like need to step up and show us what they're all about come fall camp. The corners right now are, I would say, the most inexperienced group on the defensive side, but they're one of the most talented groups on the defensive side. So there's always going to be things that you're working on and trying to build depth and all that, but I do like the roster a lot. I think we're way bigger inside than we were last year. The linebacking core is as good as there is in the country with Cialia Serra, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker. I mean, I don't know that anybody has a better linebacking core. And Coach Enna's done such a good job with those guys. So anyway, I'm excited to see how this defense comes together and how they gel. That's such a critical part of good defense, and that's what we had last year, is we had the sum of the 11 was pretty special.
I had a friend of mine yesterday, and I've only recently become aware that this person, who I knew was a football fan and a ticket holder, that they are actually very connected to multiple people. And they were trying to kind of play grandparent to everyone they knew, right? And so they tried to connect a high school recruit to a college coach. And as I'm being told the story, I'm starting to wince like, these guys kind of have it wired. I don't know if you – and so they do. And the reaction from the college coach was, oh, I know who you're talking about. You tell him he's a good player. And we know he's a good player, but he's not 6'3", and we're not taking him. And it was like, and she thought it was kind of cold-blooded and to the point. And I mean, this woman's a huge fan, but she said, "Are they really that into the?" And then her husband says, "Measurables." And I'm like, how definitive are you when you're recruiting a kid to say that kid can really play? But you just talked about the size you've got. If they don't hit the measurables, it's like, let me hook you up with the people I know at Weber State or wherever.
Yeah, measurables are a critical part of recruiting. It's not everything. But you can't coach size, you can't coach speed very well. Most of the time you're trying to recruit that stuff. The rule of thumb that we usually have is the smaller they are for their position group, the more dynamic and faster and more explosive they have to be. So football players come in all shapes and sizes. We totally understand that. But if they're small, they better be really fast and super explosive.
You speak of the secondary, and you believe the talent's there. They need to get a little more experience. We know you lost a kid like Batty up front. So where I'm going with this is, what you think is your biggest concern?
Well, I don't have, major concerns right now. Like I say, the experience that's going to occur in the secondary is going to be huge. There's some very, very talented guys there. Like Evan Johnson played a bunch for us last year, but he wasn't considered a full-time starter.
Right.
He will be now. Maury Bombas played a lot for us. But they've had, Jacob Robinson with them. They had Eddie Heckards, those guys that were with them before, Mark Collins. And now it's their show.
Right.
And I'm excited to watch those guys take it over. Jonathan Cabay is going to be a great player. Trey Alexander is going to be a great player. Those guys are super talented. But right now in the college world, they're a little inexperienced. And that's okay. I prefer still to recruit high school freshmen, develop them to where we want them in our program, and do a good job of trying to keep them here. Those guys are going to be special in this program, and I really feel that. The safety group is very similar. Falatau Satawala is going to be a great player. Tommy Prass is going to be a great player. Raider Demuni going to be a great player, but those guys have not necessarily been full-time starters yet. And I'm excited to watch how that group in the secondary develops.
Have you started prepping for the Big 12, and have you got an idea who has the most dynamic offenses and of course, who has the most dynamic players to make those offenses so good?
Well, you always start with quarterbacks, and I know Arizona State is very talented. Baylor is going to have a good offense this year. A lot of people are talking about Texas Tech. Now, we did not play them last year, so I don't know exactly where they're at. I mean, you watch them on film, and they look very good. So we dabble in this time with the entire Big 12, but we really hone in on our first three opponents.
Less than a year ago, you sort of had your life flash before your eyes.
Yeah.
and I had understood that some options were available, but one of the reasons that you wanted to stay close is health-wise and so forth. So basically, how do you feel in terms of your health going into this season?
Well, I appreciate you asking. I feel great. The weird thing about the heart attack last year was I felt great right up until I didn't. And I think that's kind of the frustrating thing, is it was something kind of under the covers, unforeseen, that hit me. And I don't know if embarrassed is the word, but still it's one of those things that I'm just not quite sure what happened.
Yeah.
And I thought I was in good shape, and I thought I was doing things mostly right, eating and the way I've carried my life, but obviously there was something there. So we're trying to be as smart as we can be, but I feel really good right now. I can't wait for the season, and I feel as prepared physically and mentally as I've ever been for a season.
So your wife and my wife had the exact same type of cancer. Unfortunately, here they are. They're both still living. Did she just say, oh, come on, that was nothing?
Yeah, pretty much. She said, I've been through way harder. But you can be tougher. Like, you can handle this better.
Suck it up.
Yeah, but at the same time, did she put the brakes on when you started doing stuff? Hey, tough guy, you just had a heart attack. Could you be smarter? You
know what was special, and I know a lot of people saw it, but her being up in the box with me for those 5 or 6 games after, that was actually a special time in my career because she could just kind of reach over, grab me by the leg and say, hey, chill out a little bit. We're good. We're in a good spot. And there was a calming effect up in the box that she had. And, we owe our wives so much, but her especially, I owe her so much. And last year she was a really critical part of that deal.
What was your record when she was in the box?
She was undefeated.
So that would lead a lot of people who are superstitious to say, hey, Jay.
I know. I got to the point where I'm like, babe, in those 2 games we lost, I'm like, you're coming back in the box with me. But it was about that time I was feeling good. She's like, all right, I'm going back down in the stands. It's way more fun down there. The box is really kind of boring because it's quiet and you don't get the atmosphere like you do down in the stands.
Yeah, we see that in the press box.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, you got to go golf. We're getting the wrap it up. We could keep you here for another hour or so, but good to see you.
You guys are always so great. Appreciate it.
There's Jay Hill. When we come back, we'll hear from Kelly Pepinga. Then we're going to hear from Austin Ainge and the 2 newest Jazz players, Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr. Stick around. Good morning. DJ and PK is proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. All right. PK and I golfing with the rest of the media at BYU's media golf event on Monday, and afterwards we got to talk to Kelly Pepinga. His thoughts on how recruiting is going. Obviously, since that time, they landed a 5-star quarterback. He didn't know it at that point, but he had a pretty good idea. Here is a guy who's now responsible for the defensive ends, Kelly Pepinga, and a little special teams talk with him as well because he's handling that as well. Here's Kelly Pepinga with PK and I.
Kelly, we've interviewed you a few times now, and you have been doing this for a while. So tell us the first thing when you see this team. Every team's distinctive somehow. What do you think when you see this team versus the other teams you've coached?
Yeah, I see talent. I think this roster is as talented as BYU's had. And it's experienced. I would say besides the position I'm coaching this year, defensive end, a lot of talent, and even at the defensive position, but there's experience everywhere. Defensive end is the one position right now that we got to make sure that we get those guys experienced and ready to roll for the season. But, yeah, I'm excited to just see our guys continue to work and get ready for this next season.
In the middle, you guys got a huge pickup in Tonavasa, right? Saw him play at Utah these years. He's a stud off the field, great interview, and also really good on the field. So got him in the middle, and then you lose some guys. Obviously, Batty on the outside. Tell us about some names that you need to see do well this year in order for that defensive end spot to be what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so Vil Puha and then Bodie Schoonover, those guys got to really step up for that position of Batty. And then at the open end position, Logan Latui's coming back. That's been with us. He was in a backup role last year, but he's been all the way going back to Jay Hill's time. He was with Jay at Weber State, so he's been in this defense for a long time. And so he's a senior, and so I think he's been a great guy being a leader and showing how things should be done. But a ton of young talent. You get the transfer from Texas, Tausili Akana. Hunter Clegg comes home off his mission that had signed with Utah, and now he's with us. Ephraim Asiata was a guy, big-time recruit that we signed a year ago, Matt Asiata's son. And there's other guys I'm missing. We got a big-time recruit out of Westlake High School, Nusi Taumiperu, who I think has a chance to have a major impact as a freshman. And so it's a very, very talented group, a very highly recruited group. Now we just got to put it out on the field, and they're inexperienced, but I think it's as talented as I've had. I've had some times at BYU where it's been a very talented group. This is as talented as I've had. They're just young, and we got to develop them.
So how much will you play different guys? How much will you play different guys and rotate through, and how much of that is to keep them fresh and how much of that is to give them all experience and see who really takes off and elevates their game, and then partway through the season maybe tighten that rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty big on making sure, like during fall camp, I think the depth chart gets pretty solidified, and then sometimes they look great in practice and they get in the game and, whatever, it doesn't look as good as they did in practice. But I think for the most part, based upon what I saw in spring ball and what I think is going to transpire in fall camp, I have a pretty good idea of who the top 6 guys are going to be. But I do think it's going to be very competitive. But my hope is that there's 4 or 5 guys that I can trust on. That was last year. I had 4 guys that were in the rotation, 5 guys that were in the rotation. But I believe, just thinking about it right now, for sure 6 guys, maybe even 7 that could potentially be fighting for those 4 or 5 spots, come the fall.
So your ideal rotation is to play 4 or 5 guys a game, or do you want more?
I have 4 or 5. If I can have 4 or 5, I think that keeps guys fresh and keeps guys, in a position to continue to want to compete and pushes guys that are playing all the time. And so that was one thing with Batty. I never felt last year there was somebody there that just would keep pushing Batty. Now, luckily, Batty wasn't a guy that ever was going to get complacent, but sometimes that happens with guys as they feel like there's nobody pushing from behind. They get complacent, but I feel like
that's where I am in my radio career.
Oh yeah, right there. But I feel good about the guys, and I feel like the competition through spring ball, through winter workouts, through summer workouts, it's keeping everybody on edge, and it's keeping everybody in that competitive spirit to earn that spot.
So how much do they play in terms of downs before you rotate? Is it more of a feel, or do you go into it with a set idea?
It's more of a feel, but typically I try to go 5 to 6 plays and then rotate those guys out. But a guy that's more experienced like Batty, it was a little bit longer, and that guy was in great shape too as well. So I think a lot of factors play into that as far as just experience that guy has, the experience behind him, but also the type of shape that guy's in. But ideally, I would say 5 to 6 plays, and then be able to rotate those guys out. And if it's a big time, so like Batty for instance, if I took him out, I was only for like 2 or 3 plays to catch his breath, and then get him right back in.
Given the way college football has gone, it just seems, the season's certainly longer, and it seems like there's more injuries than ever before. So I've heard coaches start to talk about how you talk to guys who are third string, who, once you start getting in the week-to-week stuff, how many reps are they getting, how involved do they feel? And coaches have talked about doing everything you can to keep them involved, because inevitably they're going to move up and you're going to need them at some point.
Yeah, and that happens every single year. But fortunately for us, last year that was one of the healthiest teams I've ever been on. We'd had very few season-ending injuries, and so I think our strength staff, with Coach Phyllis, who's come in, and Skylar Main, those guys have done a great job of keeping our healthy and strong. But I would say this, that I feel extremely confident that we're going to be able to put guys on the field this year at defensive end. They're going to be talented. Now, are they going to know what to do? I would compare it to this. If you can go back and look at, and I'm not saying they're Kyle Van Noy, but if you go back to 2010, 2011, when Kyle was young, there's going to be some really big plays where you're going to be like, whoa. But then there's going to be some other plays where you're like, what the crap? Like, where is this kid? What is this guy doing right now? And so that's just what happens with young, talented guys, is just being able to reel them in and get them to do their job consistently over and over and over again.
Yeah. Does it come down to they have such size and athletic ability that sometimes they just blow somebody up and make a play, and those are the wow moments we all notice? But do they get fooled pretty easily? A little deception, biting on play action stuff.
Exactly.
Not reading what everyone else on the field clearly sees.
Exactly. Like if I could just go back with Kyle and even Fred Warner and these guys that Sione Takitaki, a lot of it's just their eye control. Like what you're saying is this, they get their eyes caught in the backfield. They're looking at the quarterback, or they're trying to follow the ball rather than just reading their key. When they get locked into reading their key and doing what their key tells them to do, that's when everything clicks. And that was what Batty was exceptional at, is he had just seen things so many times that he was just putting himself in position to make plays all the time. And so, if we can get their eyes in the right spot and be able to be disciplined, then I think they're going to make a ton of plays this year.
Now, you're also special teams coach, and my gosh, Kelly, you got so much credit for last year. I'm thinking, well, wait a second, what about Farron? What about Kingston? And obviously you had Marinus taken off, and, you should get the credit because you'd take the blame, so I've got no problem with you getting the credit. But you had some real studs on the special teams last year, and you had a couple guys coming back. What is your outlook as far as being able to recreate what you did last year?
Yeah, I'm very confident. And any coach will say, you're only as good as your players are, right? And so we had great players a year ago. Really, we only lose Keelan. And, we have Will coming back. We got a really good transfer in Garrison Grimes, long snapper, Jeff's son, that came from Baylor, who started for them for 4 years. And so I'm excited to have him there. And then just getting Parker back as a returner, I think that's a key piece. And then having Sam Vanderhaar back as our punter. I mean, everything's coming back except for Keelan. And I love Keelan, and he was one of my all-time favorite guys, but I do think I think he's replaceable as far as what I've seen on our roster. I think Cody Hagan's going to step up and be a good returner. Parker, Dom McKenzie. So I feel very confident that we can do some good stuff. But we've set the standard high, and so it's my job to hold those guys to that high standard. And I'm excited to see them, compete and work towards that again this year.
All any fan asks is more trick plays. You got some wrinkles?
Hey,
you got you ripping something off from a game film, some high school
there was a lot of off-season study and a lot of film that I pulled up from Coach Hill's days at Weber State, and he had some great ideas there. But hey, it just all depends on looks. If they give us the right looks, I'm all about it. I don't want to Coach Hill's always talking about not forcing things, and so we don't want to force anything. But hopefully we get the looks that we're looking for, and we can run some stuff again.
So this play was legendary. I think it'll go down in BYU lore for years to come. What hash mark do you want it on in Rice-Eccles Stadium? And the answer was, I don't care, just whatever. I mean, wow, That's such a stud thing to say, and it's going to grow. That kick, 44, and probably in 15 years it's going to be 54 and so forth, the fish stories. But the point I'm making is, Farron, it's like we are surprised if it doesn't go right down the middle. It's like DJ off the tee. I mean, just shocking if it's not right down the middle. This kid has got to be a dream come true in terms of his ability and the combination with his confidence.
Yeah, he has a great mindset, and he's a hard worker, and he's been a great leader ever since I showed up here. When I came here from Boise State, he came here with me, and I knew he had talent when I was at Boise, but I didn't know he was going to be this good. And a lot of it's just been his work ethic. And this last week he was out in Florida kicking with some kicking guru, just getting, he calls it his tune-up, just getting tuned up, not trying to change much, but just getting him tuned up for the season. And so I've never been around a kicker that has the mindset that he has, never an excuse, and just always eager to learn and get better and looking for feedback from anybody. And I think a lot of it's just his attitude and the type of person he is.
What grade is he in?
So this will be his senior year.
Oh, so you're going to retire after this year?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got some good ones coming up too as well. So we got a kid on a mission right now that we signed in Brody Laga that I think could be special too as well. So I think we're in a good position for the next couple of years at kicker.
How about getting some frequent flyer miles, trips to Australia, even if you don't need a punter? There's so many punters. There's somebody you got to look at, right? Even if it's 2 or 3 years out.
That's already in the plan. Sam's already working it. So Sam's actually going out this next week. Actually leaves at the end of this week, and he's going to be there for a week, kicking with his coaches out there in Australia, and just kind of the same thing, getting tuned up, ready for the season, and they'll give him some pointers here and there that, not coaching rugby guys all the time, probably not as educated as those guys are. So he's going back out there, and he already told me, hey, Coach, I'll be looking for you. So he's going to be sending some names back, and hopefully I'm out in the spring out in Australia again, because I went out 2 years ago, and it ended up being a super positive for us. So.
Because you coached with Bronco Mendenhall several years ago, you're one of these guys who was coaching then and is coaching now, and so much has changed from when it was then. And I believe you had some time as an independent before you took off with Bronco to Virginia. So you had Mountain West, Independence, and now Big 12. And I think you're qualified to speak to this because you've got that varied experience. But where I'm going with this is the level of recruiting in like the 3 different phases that you've been here as an assistant coach: Mountain West, Independence, and now. Speak to how much better it is now.
Yeah, it's not even comparable. And I'm just thinking about the guys that we had on visits this last weekend. It was probably the best rated group of players we've ever had in the history of BYU football, in my opinion. And we have a chance to land every single one of those guys. Really, we felt pretty confident leaving yesterday, thinking, man, there's a shot we could get every single one of these guys, and there were 16 of them here, and all highly recruited guys. And so, and it's just what I tell everybody. It's funny when we can be competitive and pay players, just like I think how everybody else was doing back in the day.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
I just find it funny, right? All of a sudden now we can compete with these 4- and 5-star guys that we never could in the past, and so it's just you get these comments from some of these SEC coaches that are all mad about certain things, and it's okay, and now you guys know how it feels when we can be competitive.
Well, so. Yeah, and DJ can speak to this because somebody, I forget who, because so many people tell me things, and I came in, what was it, a year or two ago, I said, I had been told that SEC people really didn't like this because the playing field is going to get a lot more level because you just spoke to stuff that they've been doing now. I've actually seen people hand checks to players, which 5 years ago they would have never done it in front of me anyway. But now it's all legal, so that field has leveled to a degree.
Yeah, and it's just been great. I mean, I think our guys that we're getting right now, our guy. So let me go back. You go back 5 or 6 years ago, like you're talking about, and we have the same type of player that had been on campus, but there was something, being independent or whatever it was, something that was not letting us get over the top and landing these guys. And so I think it's a combination of being in the Big 12, a combination of now the resources that are coming into BYU, and then, the NIL piece and the money that these guys can get. I think it's a combination of everything. And Kalani, Kalani's done a great job building the culture. I think he's top 8 wins in the past 5 years in all of college football. So, I think there's a lot of pieces that go into that, but I would say the money part is probably the most competitive part that's helping us right now.
Things you don't have to worry about, but you might, at some point here that we were talking about on Sports Talk Radio. If this does turn out to be a great BYU team and the question comes up, is it the best, most talented Cougar team ever? I wasn't here in the 80s, but I've gone back and looked, and I did see them play occasionally on TV. And they were cranking out a stunning number of NFL players through the mid-'80s. Everybody remembers the quarterbacks, but Kurt Gavea played linebacker in the NFL for more than a decade, and he wasn't alone. He was surrounded by NFL guys. I don't know if you've ever gone back and looked at that. Like the standard is high if a team wants to be the best at BYU.
Yeah, and I always look at, if you go back and look at the 2020 season, they go 11-1, and the amount of NFL guys that was on that roster, and every year, I go back to the year that we were really good on defense. Maybe the best defense in BYU history was 2012 with Kyle Van Noy and Ziggy Ansah. Bronson Kafusi was on that roster. Daniel Sorensen, all these guys that played for a long time in the NFL. And so I truly believe there's a direct correlation in that, right? So if we have a really, really good team, likely of that is that a lot of those guys are going on to play in the NFL. And so I feel, Fessy and I were just talking about this, maybe the deepest and most talented receiver corps in the history of BYU, just as far as the speed goes, the size that we have, the athleticism, and the different things that those guys can do. I've never seen anything like it, and I've been a BYU fan forever, and so that's going to be fun to see those guys on the field. And I feel the same thing at D-line this year. Really all over the place. I feel like we're a deep team. Now, we got to go out on the field and we got to prove it all, and everything's got to come together, but it's a talented group, and it's our job as coaches to put it all together.
All right. Well, thanks for some time. Good luck, and we'll be watching for those trick plays.
All right. Sounds good. Appreciate you guys.
All right, there's Kelly Pepinga talking BYU football. We're going to pivot to the Utah Jazz. You're going to hear from Austin Ainge and the 2 new draft picks, Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr. Next, stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Well, the Utah Jazz had the 5th and 21st picks. They used number 5, and then with 21, they traded up to number 18, and they land Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr. Let's hear from Ace Bailey, the Rutgers freshman, who the Jazz take with the 5th pick in the draft. Here's Ace Bailey.
I know you just talked to Coach Hardy. What was that conversation? What did he tell you?
He told me a lot of stuff. He told me, very young team, come in, it's time to get to work.
Ace, it's Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. What was your reaction when you learned that you were drafted by Utah, and kind of what were your thoughts on the Utah Jazz throughout this draft process?
Oh, man, definitely. When they called my name, I was selected. It was very emotional at the time with my mom. She's crying, the whole table crying, because they know the hard work and the sacrifices we made for me to be in this position. Not just me, but my family also. So it was very emotional to be in that position.
Hi, Ace. It's Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. A lot has been made in the pre-draft process about you not working out with teams, having preferred destinations. I just want to give you a chance to say whatever you'd like about that situation.
I haven't been worried about that. I've just been focusing on basketball. That's the main thing. That's why I'm here, is just to play the basketball side, and I let my family and stuff deal with the other stuff.
Is it fair to say that those decisions were, management and your people?
Yes, ma'am.
Ace, Sam Farnsworth, KSL Channel 5, Salt Lake City. What do you feel like you can bring immediately to this Utah Jazz team?
A leader, confidence, hard worker, just a player that pushes people to be the best. I'm a very great teammate. I'm clapping for the first person to get off the bench to the last person, so I'm the person that's going to push everybody to be the best who they can be, even the coaches.
Ace, where do you think that your greatest areas are where you can improve?
I feel like I can improve on everything. Not just that. I'm very young. I'm just coming to the game, so it's a lot of stuff I can improve physically and mentally. From jump shots to the more creativity, the more ball handling, just all of it plays in effect.
Ace, what are your thoughts on, have you ever been to Utah, first of all, and what are your thoughts on moving here?
Nah, I ain't never been to Utah. Here it get hot out there, though.
There's Ace Bailey with the media now. Here's Walter Clayton Jr.
Well, did you work out for the Jazz at all during the pre-draft process?
I did not. There were just a few conversations.
Yeah. Were you surprised at all tonight when your name was called and then you learned that you would be going to the Jazz?
Not too surprised. I knew there was a possibility.
What do you hope to bring to the Jazz in your rookie year?
Definitely just some offensive versatility. Hope to, just bring a great leader, a great teammate, a great player, a guy that's willing to do whatever to win.
Well, have you ever been to Utah?
I have not. I've heard it's beautiful the past hour.
What do you know about the team, and where do you think you kind of fit in with the group?
Definitely a great young group. I might be one of the older guys coming in, but definitely a great young group. A lot of talent, and I think the talent will mesh well this next year.
Have you had any conversations with Will Hardy or the Jazz front office, and what was said in those conversations?
Yes, we had some conversations after I got drafted tonight. They like my skill set. They think I could bring something great to the team, be a great piece for the team.
Is it strange to think that you're one of the older guys after you just got drafted?
I wouldn't say strange. Obviously there's a lot of guys, about 2-3 years younger than me. I wouldn't say I'm too much older, but I wouldn't say too strange.
Where do you think the areas of your game are where you could improve the most?
Turnovers for sure, and some defensive consistency.
There's Walter Clayton Jr., who won the NCAA title at Florida and is now a Utah Jazz man. All right, now let's hear from the management side of the equation. Austin Ainge calling the shots for the first time, running the Utah Jazz. Here he is. Here are his thoughts on draft night.
Very exciting night. 2 weeks ago, sat down and looked at our picks and said, what would be the best case scenario? And these were the two guys we really wanted. So we feel very fortunate, very excited to have them in the family.
Can you talk maybe about Sarah Todd, Deseret News?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Sarah.
Can you talk maybe about your experience about guys who's, for whatever reasons, agent, management, et cetera, you don't have them come in for a workout?
Yeah, it's not super uncommon. Been through it many times through the years. And, we were able to meet with Ace at the Combine and speak to him in person, and obviously saw him play a lot, being highly rated high school player and college player. So we got to see him quite a bit.
Was there any hesitancy, though, with, I guess all the pre-draft process, a lot that was surrounding him, but okay, maybe he doesn't want to play here, maybe not?
No. He's great. Was able to speak with him. He was super excited. We're super excited. We're expecting a very bright future.
I'm curious. He said, and Walter said too, that they didn't know that the Jazz were interested in them before tonight. And curious, is that a strategic move? That you kind of want to keep your interests close to the vest. Is that, and how do you decide kind of when to share your respect for a player?
Yeah, we don't like to tell. I mean, it's mostly agents you're dealing with, right? So we don't like to say who we're going to take for sure. It's just hard. There's trades and everything, and sometimes if you just kind of keep that information private, it's easier to maneuver around a little bit. So we don't try to tip our hand in advance.
And then Ace's game, tell us about what you like about what you think you can bring to the Jazz and what you hope his development path is for the next few years. Yeah,
I mean, Ace is extremely talented shot maker, big, long, athletic. His scoring gets a lot of attention, deservedly so. He's very skilled for his size, but watching a lot of film on him, was impressed with his defensive effort and particularly his rebounding. A lot of weak side block shots, and his joy and energy for the game. We do a lot of background calls and work on guys, and everyone loves being around Ace. He's fun, smiles every day, just a breath of fresh air in the gym.
What conversations kind of people who are on league scouts, et cetera, people from Rutgers, it seems like Ace is maybe one of the less developed guys that's coming into the league, like not had as much basketball experience as some of the other guys, different programs and playing at high levels, et cetera. Does that make him seem like ultra moldable as he comes into the NBA?
I would disagree with that evaluation. I think sometimes with guys when they're rated number 1 or number 2 in high school and come in with all the fanfare that Ace and Dylan had at Rutgers, and there's a little disappointment in their season. They didn't win as many games as they were expected to. That expectations, basically the reality and expectations aren't quite matched up, and so there's a little bit harsher judgment. And the guy is pretty skilled and had some pretty big games this year. So I think I don't think he's further away or less developed than a lot of the other 18-year-olds in this toward the top of this draft.
Austin, hey, Sam Barnes with KSL Channel 5. Good to meet you. Anyway. Ace also mentioned that he has the ability to push his teammates to be the best they can, and the coaches. He's called himself an instant leader. Do you see him having that ability to be a leader right away?
I mean, it's always hard for rookies to be leaders. They have to learn what they're doing before they can help others. But like I said, I really believe in his energy and his spirit, and that is a way to lead, right? It may not be, guys, this is our defensive coverage, because most rookies I need to learn that. But it can be, let's get in the gym and let's play harder and let's fight through adversity. I think he does a lot of that naturally from me observing him from afar.
What do you like about Walter's game?
Had a chance to watch Walter a lot. Saw him play at Iona, and obviously we all saw him have a magical run this year. He is tough, smart, an amazing shooter, athletic, and mature. I mean, obviously you win as many games as he has, and you're an accomplished player already. It's been really fun for me to watch his progression. He's really gotten better as kind of an athletic kid, learning the point guard position throughout college. He just got better and better and better at it every year, and that really impressed me. Just the arc.
What went into the decision then to kind of move up for him at 18 rather than kind of
Yeah, it's impossible to know who likes a guy, right, and where they're going to go. Like I said, 2 weeks before the draft, we had these guys circled as this is our dream scenario, and so we started making calls. Quite a bit before pick 21, where we were slated. We were worried, so we just were trying to move up kind of all along the line until at 18, Washington got an offer they liked, and we made the swap there. So that was how it went.
Do you have any sort of philosophy on guys that come into the league after spending 4 years in college versus ones that come in one and done?
I don't think there's any general rules. Everyone's on their own development path. We see players all the time in the NBA hit their peaks at 28 and find it at 24, and some guys find it at 21. It's just an individual journey.
Austin, I know you're absorbing what happened tonight, but does it set the table or change the arc moving forward for what comes next?
No, not really. I've said this before, so apologies, I may say it 100 more times, but we just kind of believe in stacking good decisions, just making good decisions over and over as best we can. And then you look up and you have a lot of good players and or assets or whatever you're trying to do. So we're just trying to make good decisions every day as best we can.
How was this draft different than, I guess, your other drafts that you've been a part of, being kind of the quote-unquote head decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier just acting really smart over there, saying you should do this. It's a lot easier. But no, like I said, this turned out how we wanted, and I've got a lot of very experienced and great help to help me through it.
What was the feeling in the room seeing the first 4 picks go the way that they went?
Yeah, it's kind of what we predicted before the draft, but you never really know. Everyone does media smoke screens and fake leaks and holds their cards close, and so you never fully know. But this was what we had projected in the last few days with what we'd heard, but you just never know until it happens. But we were very excited.
What were you able to learn about Ace at the combine, being able to talk to him?
I think more than any individual answer, it was just, again, his general personality, his positivity, his energy. He's got a youthful exuberance that's contagious. I actually interviewed him at the combine when I was with Boston. I interviewed him with Boston's group, and then I was able to watch the recording of the Jazz interview also. So I get to see 2 interviews at least. But no, he was great.
Did you notice any difference in those?
Not really. Yeah. No. He, I think he probably had to do 12 or so of those. I'm sure we ask generally the same questions. We're not journalists. We're not good at asking questions like you guys.
Are you expecting for both players to play in summer leagues, both summer leagues?
Yes.
It's interesting, Austin, that the very thing that some people were concerned about with Ace is something that you said is what drew you in to some extent.
What is that concern?
Personality, his attitude.
Oh no, I feel like I feel like that is pretty universal. I would say that if you talk to anyone who's been around Ace the last couple years in basketball, any of his teammates, coaches, they'd all say the same thing. This is not a unique perspective of ours. This is pretty universal.
Over the last few days, there have been multiple rumors with you guys chasing after Jaylen Brown, and obviously you know Jaylen well, but is there truth to those rumors, and how are you approaching the next few days from a trade market point of view? I
don't like to confirm or deny rumors just as a policy, but I will this time. No, that hasn't happened. No conversations that way.
What positive changes do you see these 2 draftees making to your team?
Well, we hope they're really good at basketball. I mean, they got a lot of talent. They each can do different things, but both of them are very good shooters and scorers, and we hope that they develop and learn our system very quickly. But we understand it's a process with young guys, and so we just over the next couple years, we hope they can become really important pieces of our future.
There's Austin Ainge. When we come back, what is trending? All the headlines are next.